Okay, welcome back to the Wild Soul Rising podcast. Today we have Natalie with us, who is a psychotherapist, and we are going to be exploring a topic that is still a bit taboo. Maybe a lot of people don't feel comfortable talking about, exploring. It still is very misunderstood, I feel, which is the subject of grief. So, I'm really excited to dive into this with you, Natalie, because it's something that throughout the time that we've known each other, I think that we've been able to connect on a personal level and explore, which is really great. So, if you can just start by telling the listeners who you are, a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Yeah, I'd love to start with, because I find we automatically go into like all of our roles in life. So I'd really like to start with a bit about more of who I am. And I
I
think I've
love that.
discovered more of that lately. Yeah. And so, well, maybe where it all started. I won't go through my entire life story, but I was born in Vancouver, British Columbia, grew up in Windsor, Ontario, and then somehow landed in Montreal, Quebec, where I am now to study and work. And I'm definitely which I'm learning more and more about now, like nature lover, music lover, um, people lover, connector of people. I'm definitely a sensitive person, like deep feeling. And I think that's what got me into the work that I do. Like you said, I'm a social worker by education and a registered psychotherapist, and have kind of come a long way in my career too. I worked in mental health for, I think it's 20 years this year, maybe next year, and in different settings in the public system. And now have really in the last few years moved towards really working with modalities that I've found been the most helpful for me and that I'm really passionate about and that makes sense to me. And that's been really exciting. Yeah.
Yeah, you've really incorporated mindfulness and meditation and those types of things into your practice, right?
Yeah, yeah. I was trained in like mindfulness based cognitive therapy. This modality that's newer. When we're talking about ancient like yoga and meditation practices, I mean, those are thousands of years old. This is more kind of like a mix with like cognitive behavioral therapy. And so I find a lot of people respond well to like a little bit of everything, right? Like
Yeah.
we all want to be in like our head and like analyze things, but then we also enjoy being still and finding peace and kind of going into our bodies too. I think more and more, absolutely, these days.
hmm I think more and more people are realizing that that's a necessary part of the component, right? We're mind, body, soul, and we have to be working with all three of them together.
Absolutely. And of course, I have all the other roles too of course, daughter. Well, I'm a sister. I'm a mother of two little girls, 8 and 10, that keep me very busy and on my toes and doing a lot of healing myself too, because there's all sorts of things that come up in parenting and mothering,
Yeah.
as you know too. And I mean, it's our responsibility to work on ourselves and through all these life transitions and losses and changes and all of these things that we face.
Yeah. Because the world will always continue to change, and our life and our circumstances will always change. So, really anchoring into who am I despite these titles, despite these things that I identify with, which I really love that you started out that way. When I was recently interviewed on a podcast with the stepmom coach that I had worked with for years, and she addressed that. She was like, I find it interesting that you didn't introduce yourself as being a stepmom or a wife or like talking about any of those things. And that was something that I really learned in, kind of a dark night of the soul state of crisis when all of my life was changing. And I had this epiphany moment of, if I don't know who I am without this career, without this relationship, without this identity, do I really know who I am?
Absolutely. And I can relate very deeply to that. I took this, and I think it all came at it as it was supposed to when I left kind of my job for the, steady, secure job for the government, and did this course that just kind of came my way with this psychologist in the States that I love. It was called Yoga for the Mind. And we went deep, and it was like, and she was asking us, who are you amidst your, aside your roles? And I was like, I have no clue. Like, who am I really? Because we get
Yeah.
so absorbed by what we're doing, the doing. And it was like, whoa, I'm not sure. And so I think this phase of like midlife too, I'm certainly there in my mid 40s, and feels like a fun birthday this year. I'll be 44 in July. And um, I love this term, we all hear like midlife crisis, but she terms like midlife awakening. And there's
Yeah.
something that happens and shifts, and it's like, whoa, wait a minute, like, what do I want, or who am I? And kind of going back to yourself. And that's the part about like, I moved houses and like just nature, and I'm like, oh yeah, this is like little Natalie that like loved all these things, or like free kind of
Mhm.
dancing, and I've recently done more like somatic dance as a healing practice, and that's like really speaking to me these days. And then it's like, oh yeah, I used to love just like throwing myself around the living room when my sister would play piano, but I didn't like practicing. And it's like, oh right, like the remembering of like, and I was a figure skater for like 11 years, and that's very structured and disciplined, and I think that was totally against my nature. I'm definitely more
Yeah.
kind of wild, and like I want to like have the skill set and knowledge, but I want to use it how I want to. So
Yeah, and I
yeah.
think grief can be a really big catalyst for that as well,
Yeah.
right? And that was my experience, and so I'd love to start to like dive into this topic of grief because I'm at a place now in my journey where I feel like I have a very healthy and beautiful relationship with grief and loss and being able to hold multiple truths simultaneously, but it's not been an easy path getting here at all. So, the first question that I'd love to hear you touch on is why do so many people want to rush through grief and stay strong or stay busy or just move past the bad parts?
I think because we have so much trouble sitting in and holding and tolerating discomfort. And that comes with many more things outside of grief, but certainly grief too. We want that, and then our loved ones and people around us are also very uncomfortable, and it's
Mhm.
hard just to like sit and hold the space, right, or kind of just be present, when really you and I both know, and I think anybody who's experienced maybe significant grief, that's all there is that's really needed. um but it's hard to do that because we want to do, and we want to fix, and we want people
We
to
want to
feel
fix.
better, and we want to feel better. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and that was
um,
something that I experienced when I was grieving was being uncomfortable even sharing those experiences with other people because I didn't want to make them feel uncomfortable. And I think it can be this real unlearning of somebody who's grieving doesn't really need you to fix it. They just need you to acknowledge that it's there and see them in it and also not ask quite like not ask what they can do, but just do, right? Like
yeah.
if you want to bring food, bring food. Like don't ask what people want, just show up.
Yeah. I heard something the other day, and it's so true. We kind of feel like and this is not, it's not bad, but we feel like we've done something if we say, let me know if you need something. Just let me know if you need something, right?
Yeah.
In whatever circumstance. And it's kind of our a bit of our like kind of like, oh, like checking off the list of like, okay, I said that, and I kind of like did my part. But then we all know, are we reaching out, and are we actually asking when we do need something? That's something we all
Mhm.
struggle with too. So yeah, I agree with you completely about, well, just like the doing and kind of like bringing the food, or like maybe, yeah, taking care of their kids or whatever it is, right? Or making the call for service or whatever it is, as opposed to just kind of like, um, not doing or saying anything, or saying like, oh, let me know, I'm here for you, or let me know if you need something. But then it's like, that's
Yeah.
so wide open. It's kind of like, what do you do with that? Mm.
I had a conversation with my clients recently. She lost her father recently, and I work with her partner as well. They're such a great
Mm.
couple. They're such amazing people. And it's that similar kind of struggle, right? Of like, well, I don't know what she wants, and I need her to ask me for help. And I think on a normal day in ideal circumstances, it's fair to say that, like, yes, we should all learn how to ask for help and how to, like, receive those needs. But when you're in the depths of grief, it's not the time and space to figure out how to do that. Like, if we know that this person struggles with asking for help, don't put that burden on them to now have to do even more inner work while they're grieving. The capacity just isn't there.
No, it isn't. It isn't. I mean, we know it's like back to basics, right? Like you're literally just kind of surviving and like going through the motions. I remember when my dad passed suddenly in 2013, I had taken like a few, I was lucky enough, my God, we could talk about like bereavement days, right? With workplaces. I think it's 2 to 3,
I have a good
which,
story about bereavement days in
okay.
workplaces.
So I'm sure we both have lots of stories to share, but I had a few weeks because I was in Montreal and he was in Windsor, and it was like, whoa, right? Like trying to whirlwind. And this was before I had children, and my sister and I had to quickly go there. And, but I remember going back to work, and I remember clearly like walking in this area downtown where I would go to my office, and just feeling like, and of course there were a lot of people and like rush hour and all that, but like that things were going so quickly and fast, like that my whole world had just been turned upside down.
Mhm.
And it's like the world was going too fast for me. And I was like, whoa, like, so just trying to find your bearings, let alone, like you said, oh, now I'm going to try to figure out how to ask for help properly, or like find out what I really need.
Yeah.
It's such a difficult time. And there's no, as we know, right? There's no right or wrong way to go about it, but it just turns your whole system upside down when you lose
Yeah.
someone. Yeah.
And I'm curious, do you have any thoughts, like from all of your work with so many people over the years, where the discomfort or the tabooness of grief comes from? Like, is it societal? Is it generational? Like, where did this really, in your opinion, start, and what has the biggest impact on us?
I think a big factor is societal. I mean, with many things with our children, I think we don't just say the thing and like say what it is, right? We could say that about sexuality and things like that, or like body parts, or but when it comes to grief, I think there's so many helpful tips out there too, to like just name what it is, in an age appropriate way, of course,
Hmm.
right? So that so and so is sick, or that so and so will die, or is dying, or has died, and using those words. I think we're scared,
Yeah.
about how especially children or other people will react, but we
We
all have
make
the
it too
ability to
vague.
tolerate. Yes. And yeah, and kind of like not whimsical, but kind of like mysterious, and it's not clear. And we know children are so literal, right? So if we say different things that they may not understand, then it's like, well, we're not really being, yeah, very clear. And it's very abstract, which they don't have the capacity to handle that. So, or to, discern or distinguish that. So I think, and I've worked with quite a few people with different types of losses, and I think we might get into kind of like how trauma work can help with that. But again, it's like if we were just kind of, if things were clearer and then we had to like maybe proper support and it was like talked about, I think we would be doing better.
Mm-hmm.
And in any kind of, for sure, for a death or loss or any kind of trauma, we know, and this comes from the famous Dr. Gabor Mate, a Canadian physician who's done a lot of research. Um, Really, the longer term impact on us for trauma is if we were left alone in something, not what
Yeah.
happened to us. And I
Yeah.
find that so interesting, and I talk to a lot of people about it, that so if somebody died, okay, we're together in community, we're grieving, we're crying because we're feeling our feelings and we're getting through it together. Um, and then it's okay. We kind of like move forward with that. But if it's like a big secret or like, oh no, don't say, or like we can't have these feelings, that's when it becomes a problem and
Yeah.
can have a longer impact of trauma on the body and mind. Yeah.
Yeah, and I had an experience with that as a child actually. This
Mm,
Friday coming up on June 5th is going to be 22 years since my grandma passed away, my grandmother Oakes.
mm.
And her funeral was actually on my 10th birthday. But leading up to that, she had been sick for a long time with cancer. And I think some of her medications were changing her brain chemistry. I don't know exactly what happened, but there was basically, a bit of a fight that had happened between my parents and her that we hadn't talked to her for a couple of months, which to a child feels like years. And at that time, she was like a very special relationship. I didn't have the best relationship with my mom's parents, particularly like my maternal grandmother was just not very kind to me. And so we got a call the morning of June 5th that she had passed away. And I
Mm.
hadn't seen her in months. And she was cremated and nobody explained that to me. So I went from seeing this woman to being at, her funeral, and they come out with this box, and I remember my cousin crying saying, "What's in the box? What's in the box?"
Whoa,
And
yeah.
nobody explained any of that to us.
Mm.
And it literally, because I couldn't comprehend it, I pretended for years that it was all a lie, that she just ran away, and that I was going to just like see her someday. Like one day I was just going to
Mm.
run into her on the street because I couldn't figure it out. I couldn't process and digest how I went from seeing my grandmother to this box being put in the ground. And I've since had a conversation with my father about it, and we have a really great relationship now. But at the time, they were very much raised like crying doesn't fix anything and don't show your children your
Yeah.
emotions. And so
Mm.
when this happened, he went outside and cut the grass. And he was like, I was crying cutting the grass. And I was like, I know that
Yeah.
now. But at the time, I didn't. And so I was like, I'm not allowed to be sad about this either. And
Yeah.
I swear to God, from the age of 10 until the year before my mom passed away in 2020, I did not cry actual tears. Like, yeah, I would shed like a tear or two, but it, I just sucked it back in.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. That's the perfect example of what I was saying. And oh my God, I'm sorry you went through that. And so, but then when you go through something like that, then like you said, then there's like all these messagings of like, you know, maybe stuff around like death is very scary, or like death is like a mystery, or like you said, oh, now I suck it up when there's emotions because we don't show emotions. And yeah,
And nobody really
absolutely.
explained definitively, like, she's gone. She's not coming
Yeah,
back. And
not coming back. Yeah.
I think this is so important for parents to hear, because I know I've had clients as well who have lost their parents and don't know how to address it with their children
Yeah.
and want to make that experience really comfortable for them. And in my experience with just about everything in life, what's easier in the short term is so consequential in the long term.
Yes. Absolutely. Yeah, because then they'll make up their own kind of like story or like beliefs or things that exactly what you're saying will then be detrimental and impactful in the long term. 100%. Yeah.
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 And I'd love to hear you talk about, because you've had both experiences now of losing a parent and also being in anticipatory grief, which I think is very taboo, like a lot more taboo than even grief alone. There's so many mixed emotions and complex emotions. Would you be able to kind of hold those two experiences up under a microscope for us and help us understand grief and anticipatory grief? And maybe
Yeah.
just
I'd
giving our
love to.
listeners a definition.
Yeah, great. Yeah. So I found, there's so much online, but this one really spoke to me and it's so simple, but I really liked it for grief. So grief is the instinctive, natural, and multifaceted response to loss. And I know we've been talking about right now, like grief with death, right? But
Mhm.
grief can be the response to loss, can be the loss of a relationship, loss of I find this really interesting, loss and mourning and grieving what you thought your life was going to look like.
Yes. Oh, I have
And that
chills.
includes, I talk about this with a lot of clients, that includes death also. So I can give, it's very sad that my dad didn't get to meet my two children, my sister's two children. So it's like the grief of what I thought maybe my life would look like at this
Yeah.
phase of life. Mm-hmm. And then I'll read the other one, anticipatory grief. Yes, we do not talk about this nearly enough. There's also ambiguous loss, which I think, yeah, I can talk about that. So anticipatory grief is an emotional response experienced before an impending loss actually occurs. It involves mourning not only the future absence of a loved one, but also anticipated lost opportunities, milestones, or even a decline in health and independence.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, deep breath after that one. And then
I know. I
ambiguous
actually have
loss.
tears in my eyes.
Yeah, yeah, the stuff will probably come up for me. We'll see. It is, and I might be doing a bit of, we'll allow it, but my natural tendency too, and I've shared online is, in my childhood was to like suppress, push down as well. Um, and I was the youngest and would kind of make sure everybody else was okay. Classic people pleaser, which develops right over the years. But yeah, so then also I mentioned ambiguous loss, and this is when somebody's still here physically, but
Mhm.
they're not here anymore. So the example of somebody with dementia or Alzheimer's, and I'll talk about my mom, or somebody, I found this so interesting when I was reading up on it a bit. I mean, it makes sense. Maybe somebody with a substance abuse issue, somebody's like off in fighting in a war. So
Yeah.
it's like, or like, a tumultuous relationship with a family member. So like they're physically still here living, but there's like
But
this
you've lost.
strange, yeah, lost a part of them or don't have contact or they're not there mentally or physically, maybe, right? Depending on what's happening. And this is, right? I mean, the term obviously ambiguous, it's like confusing and like weird. And man, is the journey of dementia and Alzheimer's. I mean, it's been a journey. Yeah, it's been a journey. She was diagnosed in, I still can't, it's either 2020 or 2021. So right during the pandemic. And I think there was a rise at that time too, because a lot of people, I definitely think the isolation and not as much connection. I mean, there's so many factors, right, with that disease and illness. I did read and hear recently that it can begin in your 40s,
Mm.
based on like lifestyle and different things, and that's interesting, right? So yeah, I feel like I've lived the two kind of extremes. My dad
Yeah.
died suddenly of a heart attack, like gone in 2013. He didn't have the best health habits that, people have heart attacks all the time, but
It's
His
always
body
a
couldn't.
surprise.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, he wasn't ill at all. So it was major shock to the system, like big shock. And then this feels like my mom was diagnosed with like vascular dementia, and then later got diagnosed with Alzheimer's. Um, it's like, you could say, like a slow death of deaths.
Mhm.
And but there's certainly, it's so interesting because there's so many like little like micro losses and griefs. And anybody, I actually have quite a few connections and friends, which is so helpful, that either their mother or father also have dementia or Alzheimer's. They're in long-term care. That there's so many like layers to it, and like steps and progression, right? Like the memory loss, and then like getting their driver's license revoked, to like physical hygiene going down, to then like being placed in long-term care, which was something literally
Mhm.
just did. It's quite fresh, like just over a month ago. Um, but so it's, I mean, it's the extremes, right? To live through
Yeah.
that. And to bring us back to our other point, how else, like to describe that to my daughters again is so we can be very literal, and they see it, right? So it's
Yeah.
different when somebody dies. It's like, and they didn't know my father, but we have talked about him and all that. But when their other grandparents or other people die in their lives, because inevitably they're going to experience that, then the person's gone, right? With this, it's like, well, she's still there, but her mind's still there. Her memory's not there, and her mind's not there, rather, and she's losing that. But there's still a lot of parts of her that are still there, which is so amazing
Yeah.
and fascinating to see. Um,
I always
so,
say to people too, it's, everything is like two sides to the same coin. And I don't think we can ever measure like what is harder, a sudden loss or knowing that they're different types of pain, but in equal parts almost. It's just different. And again, I think even just my hope for people listening to this episode is that they start to think about grief and all the different types of grief and give themselves permission to feel that, because so many people, even, I have clients who maybe weren't able to have children and haven't given themselves permission to grieve the fact that they had this vision of their life and how it was going to go. And in a way, it's almost like they lost children because they were alive in their mind and in this version of their life
mm,
that they had planned.
absolutely. And it's really important to talk about that and let yourself feel those things, because that's the part, like we were saying, like the grieving what I thought my life was going to look like. And that's, yeah, a great example of like having children, or maybe following that like passion or career that you really wanted to and you never did.
Yeah.
Or I don't know, living in a certain place or whatever it is, right? I think that's a powerful one. Like I said, I talk about a lot with a lot of people around, like, it's okay to feel and like mourn that that wasn't how you wanted it to be. Mm.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think that gets us too in the body, because it's like, oh, maybe that's what that is, or maybe that's what that anxiety is about, or like depression or whatever it is. Yeah.
Sometimes just being able to name it has a lot of power to actually take away the the painful emotion around it.
Yes. And because it's so um prevalent, all of these things, like my mom, the journey with my mom. My sister and I actually went on a national radio show last year, and I was like,
Yes.
whoa, with the current with Matt Galloway, to talk about aging parents and the experience. And for me, it was so cathartic to like just like express and talk about what was happening, because like many of us, right, growing up in like in a household where you kind of like sweep things under the rug, or like you don't express it, or you suppress or push down, like I was with my emotions. And then it was like, whoa, to like just talk about this out loud,
Mm-hmm.
um like I do, and preach to my clients to talk and share and like find the people you feel comfortable with or be in community is so powerful,
Yeah.
and worth it. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
also, I don't know if you feel the same way, but I'll touch on it for myself, from my own experience, because it can be really helpful, I think, for people to know that like these two things can be true when you're in anticipatory grief, when you have, a child, a parent, somebody who is suffering, and it's very taxing on you. And there can be a feeling of like, I really don't want them to die, while also simultaneously having an awareness of the responsibilities, I'll say, that will be lifted when this person has transitioned out of the physical lifetime. And it's something that I think is really tough to try to, you know, make heads or tails of in your own mind and body, that I really want this person to stay here. And also, there's so much suffering in this moment with them going through this experience.
Yes, and we can feel so much shame and guilt, with those feelings, and they're totally natural and normal. And I can't speak to, obviously, because my dad went so suddenly in my mom's situation. It's like I'm hoping, of course, that there's like way more years and that she, plateaus at her functioning with Alzheimer's right now and is, to not have lived, the sudden loss of my dad. But we don't know, right? And
Yeah.
that's, my gosh, is like mindfulness. I mean, I think there's no coincidence that it came into my life at a certain time and kind of prepped me for all of this, and it's been so helpful because, especially with something like Alzheimer's, I mean, it's the epitome. Literally, the person is forgetting what happened like 2 seconds ago.
Yeah.
Literally. So like, where else can you be but like the present moment? Like
Yeah.
enjoying something, or I don't know, enjoying that meal together, or like singing and dancing, or laughing, which she does so much of. And but it's hard too. But I can speak to kind of, and I'm sure people who have been through this can relate to, again, this big transition of and change and loss, because with all change comes loss. I love
Mm-hmm.
that like expression. It's like when she left her home that she was living in, I mean, of 22 years, like that's a major loss and transition to. And there can be all sorts of kind of like guilt, or like, my stepdad did a phenomenal job, and then, but there's only so much, like she needed more care. And
Yeah.
now she's, in like community, which I find really interesting, and like a lot of like nurturance, and like, women and young men and staff, and like people taking care of her, and like activities, and like the stimulation where, this is what she needs right now. And it's very interesting for her story because she worked as a nurse her entire career and kind of ended,
Mhm. All that care coming
um,
back to her in a way.
yeah, yeah, and literally finished her career working in long-term care with the elderly,
Whoa.
and now she's being taken care of. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
A shocking amount of people that I work with, their mothers are experiencing Alzheimer's or dementia, which I think is so interesting. There tends to be some, again, the work of Dr. Gabor Mate, and there's lots of metaphysical, doctors out there who can draw connections between life experiences, repressed emotions, and certain symptoms, if you're interested in that, listeners. But there's two sides of that experience of, for some people, they had a really beautiful relationship with their parent, and there's that grief there, but there's a desire to take care of them. And for some people, they very much didn't have a positive relationship with a
mm,
parent, and it's more of a sense of obligation, while also sometimes the parent has gone from having a personality that was problematic or traumatic to them growing up, to completely shifting to being more positive
yeah,
and more loving. And sometimes it's the opposite. They went from being very positive and loving to being very angry and negative. And there's just, I think it really needs to be talked about more. And I love that, you're talking about Alzheimer's and dementia and your experience with that to give people permission to start to explore that all of these possibilities, all of these feelings are normal.
Yes. And with that, what you're saying, my sister and I have done a lot of talking and reflecting, and I think we shared this on that interview as well about our experience. And you're absolutely right. Everybody has different experiences, or the progression, like other, like something like Parkinson's, multiple sclerosis, lupus, whatever it is. Obviously, we're speaking of Alzheimer's and dementia here, is so different for people. And it's fascinating too with, like what is it that makes, and well, the question before that, why do some people get it and not others? And like, where does it come from? And like you're saying, there's all this research and that's showing different things. But for her, working as, like giving in the caregiving health field as a nurse for her entire life, and then like taking care of 2 daughters, and having my parents divorced when I was 15, and so like having some turbulent times and all that. She was like a happy person, but always like quite stressed and kind of like on edge. And then we noticed, it's so interesting, as soon as like it slowly started to happen, and but now she's like very, and I do resort more to like childlike kind of behaviors, but she's like very like jolly and joyful and like silly and like laughs at anything, and so present and just kind of silly and fun, and where she wasn't always like that. And so it's nice to see. It's almost like a bit of a silver lining that like now she's just almost just kind of like maybe being her true self and just like being, and there's also no filter, and there can be some sassy sides and all that, but it's pretty amazing. But I know, like you said, that's not the case for everyone, right? Some people can become like quite violent or paranoid or things like that. But it's it's a guess and get. You don't know how they're going to be. And it's scary to
Which
think
I
about
think
too,
is
right? Like, will this happen to me? Will I have this? Like, how can I best take care of myself now? But again,
which I always like to remember for myself, to not to pretend that you ever know how you would actually deal with a situation like that if it were to happen. Because I think when people are grieving, again, whether it is a version of their life, a relationship ending, a job ending, or a physical loss or an anticipatory loss of a loved one, it can be really easy to stand on the sidelines and judge the way that people are going through that. And you just don't know how you are going to deal with something until you're in it. And I try to be self-aware enough not to even, entertain those ideas in my mind, because I'm like, I don't want to find out. Like, I don't want to find out how I would cope with the loss of a child or this specific type of loss. Right. And so just really trying to, when somebody is experiencing that grief, just remembering like, I'm not them. I don't have their experiences with this person, their mind, their trauma. I really can't know what I would do if I were them.
Absolutely. Yeah, for any circumstance. And so giving other people grace, and then giving it to ourselves too, because of course there's so much guilt around, and I can speak from my experience, and I know many people have experienced, like you're saying, just your kind of network of your clients, and then a lot of people I know, and we just know the rates of this particular disease is just skyrocketing with like the baby boomer generation, right? And so like, how do you maneuver that, navigate that? What do you do, right? Does a person stay home? Do they go into a facility? Like, and there can be so much judgment, and it's kind of like you said, we have no idea what you would do And so, I was going to say how difficult it is being a 10-hour drive away from where she lives. Like, it takes me 10 hours from Montreal to get to Windsor. So it's like, there's only in this journey, but it's been amazing with the support with my stepfather and my sister and like our little village and people that have like, really been there and shown up. You do what you can, and
Yeah.
that is enough. And again, it's okay to be enough too. We have to give ourselves that grace, because we can
I
like
think,
shoulda, woulda, coulda till we're blue in the face, right? Like,
yeah. I think since you mentioned, specifically that there's a rise of it with the boomer generation, it's because you would be Gen X then, right?
yeah,
Would
what am I? Am I like the tail end of millennial? I don't know. I
Yeah, I
don't
think
know.
you probably fall somewhere between the two. So
1982.
like I'm
Yeah.
within millennial, you're I think somewhere within like they call it zillennials, right? But there's a lot of animosity between our generations and the boomers, right? The way that they set us up for things and a lot of the, quote unquote trauma that we talk about with the boomers of I think there
Yeah.
was a lot of like toxic positivity mindset, like you have it better than us. And I do think that it's really interesting. And I'm not trying to claim that I can diagnose or I'm a doctor, I have it all figured out. But when you mention that there's a really big increase in dementia and Alzheimer's in the boomer generation, I always feel intuitively like it is the repressed parts of us that get to come out through this experience. And, I actually have a lot of compassion in seeing what caused them to be the way that they were. And it's not about what is like right or wrong, but what is the pain beneath the behavior, I think is always so important, not to like let somebody else off the hook. I think that's why a lot of people struggle with forgiveness, but because what is this anger doing to you? Like, what is this resentment doing to you to hold on to it?
Absolutely. I love that. And I'd like to share something that I've noticed lately with different generations of people in my life. There's certain things that are so ingrained, that stay there and stick. And I
Yeah,
find
I'd love
this
to hear.
fascinating, obviously, because of the work I do. But two things are, well, one big one, and I know this is kind of I know you've shared and talked about this before. We won't totally, I know we're on one topic, but you'll bring me back. But the deep-seated thoughts and like negativity around our bodies as women. This to
Mm,
me is fascinating, that like even amidst like trauma, amidst cognitive decline, not all the capacities there. And I'm, um, thinking of different, women of different generations I've spoken to, like 60, 70, 80s, in my personal and in my work. Um, these, for some reason, some of these strong, like negative beliefs and things are still present and still there.
mhm.
Again, even amidst like maybe like physical or cognitive delay or whatever. And that to me is kind of like, whoa, like some of these beliefs are so deep seated and conditioned and like ingrained in there that it's still a concern at those ages, and I
You
think
know,
so much of that is societal and like and personal and developmental. Yeah.
I love that you brought that up, and I have chills because even my
Mm,
mother in the last year of her life, so
mm.
she was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis when I was about 4 years old, and then
Oh,
in 2010 she was diagnosed with breast cancer, and it metastasized to her bones. So in 2020 to 2021, when she passed away, her spine was literally collapsing. It was all throughout her body. She lost, a couple inches of height. And we,
wow.
kind of joke about it in a way of how much she cared about her hair. She'd wake up from surgery, like double mastectomy, and she wakes up and she goes, "How's my hair?" And she's like fixing her, like, "Do I look okay?" Before every surgery, she's shaving her legs. She's making sure that like she's clean and she smells good. And even at, the very end when she was in excruciating amounts of pain, can you
Mm.
pluck my eyebrows? Can you pluck my chin hair? Can you straighten my hair? And I'm like, Mom, why are you worried about these things? And of course I did it. Like, that's what I can do for her to bring her peace in these moments.
Right.
But I hadn't thought about it in that way of like, holy cow, how
Yeah.
crazy is it that this is something that we care about so much, even at this point in our suffering?
Yeah. 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 Or like, absolutely. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that with me. Like, that's that's something. Yeah. And yeah, the concern about our own bodies or others too, right? And maybe like the judgment. That's what I've heard a bit, right? Kind of like the like, oh, she looks kind of fat, or like she's fat, or like, or also, right? The like, oh, I shouldn't eat that, or I'm gonna get fat, or look at my belly. And it's just like, it's still so alive for
Yeah.
them.
And
Mhm.
it's something that I've really been working on in terms of, so my mom passed away at 55 years old and she
Mm.
didn't get to age really. And I'm like,
Yeah.
why am I so afraid of aging? Like, how beautiful would it be to have a full head of gray hair one day? Like, to make it to that, to have the smile lines, like
Yeah.
this proof that I have like lived and enjoyed my life. And I
Mhm.
think it's so heartbreaking that as a society we have decided that that is not beautiful and that that is not the beauty standard. And I'm really trying to be the change that I want to see in the world. Like, I keep wishing that I would see more people who, and I'm not trying to judge Botox or fillers or anything like that, because
Mhm.
there's also part of me that strongly believes that if you're unhappy with something, you should give yourself permission to change it. And at
Yeah.
the same time, I think that when we're noticing the urge to do these things, we should maybe sit with it and really question where that's coming from for a little bit longer. And if I can find a way to shift the belief system that I'm not good enough as I am, that I'm not beautiful because I don't look like, the person who's sitting next to me. And so yeah, I've just decided like I'm not going to pluck my gray hairs. I'm not going to start this cycle of dyeing my roots and then never growing it out, because I'm just going to let it happen. And I'll take care of my skin and I'll make sure that I, still do the things that can help me feel good. But I'm going to draw the line somewhere in terms of this never ending hamster wheel to like look younger.
Yes. Yeah. And look younger, be a certain way, feel a certain way. Absolutely. Yeah. That's making me think of the recent story of one of the famous tennis players who's coming back from retirement, and she's 44. And there was all this, I found myself getting infuriated when I heard the story. I was like, whoa, because there's all this judgment around like, well, she shouldn't be coming back, or what, like, she's won enough, like she's done enough, she's old enough. And we know, like, okay, athletes, right, it's a much younger age of retirement and all that because they peak and all that. But it's like, if she wants to and she's worked her way there, then like, who cares? Let her do that. And like,
Yeah.
like, why are we putting regulations and rules on people's, well, yeah, bodies, capacities, abilities? It's just, I mean, we could get in, I'm sure, a whole other conversation about all of
Well,
that and the
I think
patriarchy.
it's still I think it still relates because, the threads that I've been pulling in terms of like, how did we get here? Because the wisdom of the cycles of life and death and rebirth, like those are actually very ancient things. Like now we call it a death doula, right? But before that just was
Yeah.
a way of being, and we honored our elders and we listened to them and we took their wisdom and we talked about death, and we had this different level of respect for life. And also I think that previously we were more comfortable with loss, and we've kind of gotten into this place where we're trying to play God and we're trying to prevent all of these things. And listen, I'm not saying that we shouldn't look for cures. I'm not saying that we shouldn't advance medically, right? I'm just talking about this deep-seated fear of death, which
Yeah.
I think really takes away from what our ancestors knew and what many of us still know, which is the soul is eternal.
Mm.
There's a death of the mind, there's a death of the physical body, but there's not a death of the soul. And
Yeah.
I think that older generations, you know, they learned from their elders in that way, and they had that, I think, deeper belief in something that was greater than them, that has somehow been lost.
Yes. And I love that you brought that up, and maybe I can share my experience of, and again, obviously they're very different. Again, like we were saying, my dad suddenly dying, and then my mom in this journey. I can say I've experienced a few other significant losses, like a colleague a few years ago who was fairly young, in her 60s, and then a tragic loss, a death by suicide in my neighborhood last summer.
Yeah, I
So that feels
remember
very
that.
fresh too. And yeah, but I think all the, like, just the different healing and inner work I've done, and I've definitely been delving into much deeper, kind of like my spiritual side, that all of this, and this is my experience and my story, like, has really helped me to, like, have a broader view, like you're saying, and
Mm-hmm.
kind of like, okay, there can still be a connection, and like, this is me. I know some people, like, I have like beautiful cardinals in my backyard, like getting like signs or symbols, or like feeling connected in like a certain way, to those people on the other side. And I certainly did not, but this has been my journey, right? Like when my, oh my God, 13 years ago this summer when my dad died, I was not there at all, at all. And what's really interesting, oh my God, how many years is that? Oh gosh, next year, 20 years, when I came to Montreal to study at McGill. My internship, I ran like a pilot project bereavement support group, and I was, what, do the math, I don't know, 44 minus minus almost yeah, so almost 20 years. Oh my God, 23, 24. Yeah, when I did masters, I had none of
Crazy.
this life experience of loss or anything. But it's just to say, right, that it's not to say you have to. And, you know, a lot of therapists, we talk about this, and you know, different, like knowing and relating to people, and if you've experienced and all of that. And I'm like, my God. And I just the other day brought up this, and you had asked me to join you here, and I'm like, whoa, things are coming together. I found the folder that said like bereavement
Mm-hmm.
group, and it was like 2007. And it just dawned on me. I'm like, oh my God, I've lived so much loss since
Yeah.
then. And so now it feels more, I guess, just meaningful. And maybe I just feel more ready to talk about this more now, and maybe delve into like offering some grief support groups, or like, just opening it up, and yeah, again, just like communicating and expressing and talking more about all of this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's such a huge difference, you know, reading a book versus living a book,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
and to know but to understand are two very different things.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
you know, again, the belief system that I try to live in is like, it's about the effort, not the outcome. I do believe in co-creation. I do
Mm.
believe that we are active participants in our life. And my mom did a lot of things to support herself and to support her quality of life. She did a lot of natural stuff like qigong and eating, you know,
Mm.
specific foods that could support her blood type and her nervous system. And she did oxygen therapy, and like she did a lot of, I've been in this world of esoteric stuff from a very young age, which I also
Mm.
think like, whoa, what a beautiful gift in that as well, that literally this experience led me to always being open to these alternative forms of things. Like I was 9 years old eating like chayote and papaya and avocados and,
I love
juicing
it.
things and corn silk tea and watching my mom do these funny, slow movements in her qigong classes. And so I believe in that. And also at the end of the day, if we put in all of this effort and we tried our best and she passed away anyways, then I have to believe
Mm.
that that was part of God's plan for her and God's purpose for her. And maybe that's naive, but it's also the thing that brings me peace. And I believe, if the bus is coming, you have to run to it and try to catch it. But if you miss it, then you have to say, I wasn't meant to be on that bus for whatever reason. I don't know yet.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree 100%. And I had something that popped up and now it just went away when you said, oh, and for me, I think that again, I don't think there's any coincidence that like, it's so interesting, right? My mom worked in healthcare. Like I said, my dad owned his own little business. So I feel like I literally have like
Yeah.
brought the two together, and, like how beautiful to like have that, a little bit of each of them. And
Yeah, definitely. And even after I lost my mom, I was just sharing this story with a friend yesterday. I was not ready to connect with her on the other side for a while. And it was
mm,
actually one night that I had smoked a little weed. And so, that ability to kind of like the conscious controlling mind was quiet. I was sitting on the counter in my kitchen, that's my grieving spot is the kitchen counter.
mm,
Um, and she was there and she was like, this is just as real as when I was here physically. Like I am still here. I am still with you. And I think having these experiences as well, and even if you don't believe in it, just being open to like, hey, God, universe, source, whatever you believe in, if this is
yeah.
real, can you just show me? Like, can you find some major way to get this message across? Because I want to believe, but I'm struggling. You don't have to be
Mm.
100% there. You just have to be willing.
Yeah, and open, huh? I think when you're open and kind of maybe when I don't know if you agree with this too, like when you like slow down and quiet down too and are like open to, that's when you'll kind of receive and maybe get some like signs or like something. And I had quite a few things happen, and even like right after his death and my dad's death, that it was like there were just like these signs that would come here and there, and I'm like, whoa, like this is, what is this, and
Yeah.
I was raised Catholic, and I'm not practicing any religion right now, and or as an adult, and but I definitely, like I said, I think my spiritual side is like very much newer. That's interesting about your story and all that with your mom and being 9 years old, and but for me it's like much kind of newer and more recent, but to me it's so clear that this is all happening like how it's supposed to, and kind of like falling
Yeah.
into place. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And if it doesn't make sense right now, I always say like you just have to keep going. Like space and
Mm.
time, distance gives you perspective to look back and see, the connections or what might have come from that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'd
Yeah.
love to hear from you. Two more things before we close off, which is what does grief actually need? And what do you wish that you knew sooner, whether that was before the loss of your father or before your mother's diagnosis? Like for anybody who is in it right now, what do you wish you knew sooner?
Well, maybe the first one, I think like we were saying before, but I think just simply, but this is so easy, so much easier said than done. But I think grief needs presence, tending to, grace, and compassion,
Mm-hmm.
and allowance to be whatever it's going to be. Right? I'm sure you know these. Right? It's like the infamous. I say to people, this is my way of kind of explaining it. That some days it's like a droplet of water, and some days it's like a steady rain, and some days it's like a freaking tsunami. You know,
Yeah,
and
it's like the weather.
yeah, yeah, yeah. We weathered the storms, and What I wish I knew? I don't know. I think I needed this like journey. I think I was so not, I don't think I wanted to know this, but I can say maybe how it's like played out for me. I think I was so with, and I know so many people, and I talk about this a lot in my work when we talk about trauma work. I think I was very disconnected with my body and very like
Mhm.
dissociated, like many of us. Huh? And so when my dad died, it was like that fast I was describing, or just like going through the motions, or like on autopilot. I remember at like the funeral home and like doing all those like logisticy steps you have to do that
Yeah.
you're just like, what am I even doing? You can't even see straight when you're doing all of that.
Which I think is
Not
total
to
bullshit that we've set it up that it's like somebody passes away and their funeral's in a week and you have to make
right?
all these like I I hate that, and I've literally said to my husband like if I go first, which I hope I do, like please don't feel the need to like do things that way to
I
rush
love
through it.
that. Yeah. Yeah, because you have like, yeah, it's just, and with my dad's situation, it was such a shock that I was literally, and again, had not done a lot of this like healing that I've done since then. Um, that now I think I'm like a lot more present with. Of course, is it going to be devastating, and will I be on autopilot to a certain extent? Absolutely, when my mom dies and other people in my life, but I think I'm a lot more present now than I ever was, and I think that's such a gift, just to like feel it all no matter what.
Yeah.
Right, it sucks, it's hard, let's just say it what it is. Right, it's
Yeah.
brutal, it is brutal.
And
But
that's really what I wish I knew sooner too. Like just feel it, just go right through it.
yeah.
Don't be afraid of it. And that I think a lot of us have a fear of that it's never going to be over. Like if I feel it, then I'm
Mm,
never going to be okay again, and you
yeah.
will. Like I do compare it in a way to a breakup because that's what a lot of people can understand is that there's one morning where you just wake up and you realize that you haven't thought of them for a week. And then there's a
Yeah.
different kind of grief that comes along with that, right?
Mm-hmm.
But there's just one day where you wake up and you realize that there's more space between you and that thing. Like I remember when I realized, oh, I don't remember the last time I went to pick up the phone to call my mom, and that pattern is actually starting to sink in of like, okay, this isn't what we do anymore. And then there was grief there. I was like, ooh, now I feel guilty because I'm forgetting or moving on, and okay, this is a new wave that's coming over, but it it never goes away. It changes and it evolves. And I also wish that somebody had told me not to try to get back to the way that I used to feel, because you're never going to get
Mm,
back. Like there's no like before anymore. It's who you
yeah.
are with this and after this.
Yeah, and I remember you saying this, and I found this extremely helpful. I think at one of the talks, or one of your some you were talking about somebody with like that your relationship and your whole like everything's going to change, and that's okay to like find out who the new you is with your parent with Alzheimer's or dementia. And
Yeah.
that's, I find that extremely helpful and important to remember. And we all, and it's okay if we're shifting and changing. But again, to give ourselves grace and compassion, because these things are very heavy and very hard to
Yeah.
go through.
What
Yeah.
mattered to me before that type of loss doesn't
Mm,
matter to me anymore. And that's okay. Like I think that's beautiful. If you were the same,
mm.
like
Yeah.
how strange would it be if you were the same after a major loss? And I don't remember who says it or what the exact kind of wording is, but there's a quote that goes, to live is to die over and over again. And I love
Mm,
that because I think that that's very, like, to be alive is to be willing to continue to let past versions of you die.
yeah. I love that. Yeah. I
And
think
then
we were
have
saying
a
before
funeral
too,
for
right?
them as well, grieve them.
Yeah, just have ceremonies to like grieve all of ourselves, maybe, or I don't know. Yeah, yeah. And just like the capacity to, that's been the biggest lesson for me too, I think, in the last like 4 or 5 years of all this healing work, is that we have the capacity to hold the light in the dark. And I can't remember if it's, is it Pema Chodron or Jack Cornfield or one of them that says like, we all live like, right, 10,000 joys, 10,000 sorrows, and we have the capacity to hold them all.
Yeah.
We all, and that's the beauty of them. That's why I'm so passionate about, and I know you too, and you do amazing work of like being in community and just like sharing and being present for people. And sometimes we don't even have to say much at all, like we were saying in the
Yeah.
beginning.
You just
Just
have to
being
show
there,
up.
just witnessing. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Goes so far.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Natalie. I hope that I'm sure our listeners have gotten so much out of this, and I'm really grateful to have you on and talk about this topic. If you want to just let people know a little bit about where they can find you, I'll link it in the show notes as well. But yeah, what your website, your Instagram, what your kind of offers are right now.
Yeah, sounds good. Thank you so much for having me. That was really special, and it felt, yeah, it was really nice for me to talk about this with you. So thank you.
Thank you.
Um, so I have a few little things coming up. Actually, if anyone's interested, so my services are, because I'm licensed in Quebec, it's only for Quebec residents, but I have a free, so that's for everybody, meditation coming up next Thursday, yeah, June 11th, from 5:30 till 7 p.m. That's all on my Instagram, which is it's a little lengthy, at mindfulness meditation MTL from Montreal. And then I have a little, for I guess Quebec residents, a outdoor retreat in a park in the summer on July 11th, and then other stuff to come, some exciting things like thinking about international retreats, and I offered this like mindfulness based cognitive therapy, like 8-week online program. I've done that for the past 6 or 7 years, and I'm taking a little pause this fall to just almost like revamp it a bit. And I'm really excited about like bringing in other topics with mindfulness. And so this
Yeah.
feels like the timing of this conversation together, and some of the stuff I raised up there too about like, I mean, we can talk about mindfulness with grief, with body image issues, with all sorts of things.
Yeah.
So I want to incorporate some of those things in there. So I'm really excited about that. Yeah.
Oh, I love that. 2.0.
Yeah.
Amazing. Okay, thank you so much, Natalie. And we'll be back with another episode in a couple weeks. Thank you guys for listening.